Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. Glad to have you back. That was like my announcer voice. Welcome to the Dental Wealth Podcast.
It's like a commercial.
I paid a voiceover guy years ago. We did a spot.
Remember.
Yeah, remember I paid that voiceover guy? I thought that must be a good job, like just reading scripts all day long, right?
It's always the same person.
I want to say it was like $2,000 for him to read a script. I mean, but it sounded amazing.
It's always good. It's like Bryan Cranston does the Ford commercials, and you're like, how much are they paying you to do this? This must be an easy gig.
You stand to do this.
Yeah.
We're not getting paid enough to do our voices. Are
Put me in a Pixar movie. Reese, put me in a Pixar movie.
So, we've gotten some good feedback on especially the last few episodes, and I love it. I love the feedback, and people asking questions. One thing that I'll even throw a caveat for those of you listening to last week, just because someone is W-2 doesn't mean that you have to technically pay them the way you traditionally think you need to.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that because somebody on our team asked me about it. I was like, no, I was a statutory employee, for instance, and I was paid through commissions and W-2, but I wasn't technically
a
1099, right?
Yeah.
So just so you guys know, I mean, there's complexities around that. And sometimes in this podcast, this isn't the accounting podcast, So if I turn it into the accounting podcast, most of you will fall asleep.
Well, I'll be asleep.
So I try not to turn it into the accounting podcast. If you guys would like me to turn it to the accounting podcast, I will be more than happy to. I'll lose most of you within the first 5 minutes. I mean, it'll
be interesting to say.
We'll do that. And we'll do the actuary podcast. Between the two of those, we'll get four members.
Get a pocket protector too. Calculators everywhere.
So I wanted to talk today. And you and I were talking about this before this meeting, which is really the changes in the industry, and our changes even with our own organization, and what that actually looks like, and who's listening to this podcast. And first of all, I know the active people that listen to this podcast, right? I know who you are, and if I would go to those people, I would kind of classify them as growing organizations, growing scalability, growing success, these are growing organizations. But on the other side of that, what I would call is the mom and pop.
Yeah.
And I think there's this place where you've got to make a decision. And, as you start thinking about your business, you've got to decide whether you're going to be a mom and pop or you're going to be a growing organization. I have no bones about it by telling you, if you're a mom and pop, you are going to get crushed in the future in this industry.
Yeah. You're getting crushed right now.
Yeah. I mean,
not even future.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. I mean, and I'd be surprised if mom and pops are even listening to this, because there's complexity of conversation. And, I think that there's a place where you have to decide whether you want to be a growing, thriving organization or you want to be a mom and pop.
Yeah.
And you want to have an office manager, a hygienist, and an assistant. And even though you're not going to last, because you're not going to make it in this industry. There's too many people like me and like us and that are coaching growing organizations that you'll just get decimated. You can't keep up. This isn't. It's interesting. I mean, it's like coming out with typewriters and assuming that typewriters are going to be, great. Although I have to
technology
I will tell you though, I was at the Atlanta History Museum recently, and there was a typewriter there, and this kid walked over. It's so cool to watch. He walked over and he was like, "Mom, what is this thing?" Right? And she was like, "Cha-ching," and she was like, "Why would somebody use this?" Well, why would somebody want to be a mom and pop in this industry? I don't know either. Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's.
Yeah, I feel like it's still like it's dental practice versus business too. You're still referring to your business as a dental practice. You're a mom and pop. Like you're not truly like you haven't switched that mindset yet to say that you are a business.
Well, and even we've talked about it because Tower Leadership. One of the things we've instituted is a minimum of revenues in our own clients, because we're not. There's a certain revenue. I mean, unless you're, we'll allow someone to kind of work towards it, and if they do, then we'll let them through. But we've even found ourselves. I mean, when you have somebody who wants to stay mom and pop, I was talking to somebody. Actually, I was talking to a colleague, not even he was not even a dental colleague. We were having this conversation. I said, you got to think about what it takes to be $600,000 in dental. You got to try to do that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you have every 6 months. So let's just say you get 50 patients a month, and 50 patients a month are paying you. Obviously, on the comprehensive, when they first show up, it's like $300. But every 6 months, those people pay $150.
Yeah.
And so then every 6 months, you're rolling in a new group of people. Over 30 years.
Yeah. You couldn't get over that.
You couldn't get over 600 grand.
Yep.
You are fighting success.
Yep.
You have got to be. You have
It's just
literally
complacent.
complacent, not caring, not hiring, not trying, no
You're just-
experience, cheapest.
You're Monday to Thursday, sometimes Monday to Wednesday.
Monday. I always loved Monday, Wednesday. When I said to somebody, maybe that's a mom and pop.
Yeah.
If your office hours or remember that here's your sign.
Yeah.
Remember that.
Here's a sign that you're
what was
a
that?
mom and pop.
What was that comedian? What was it? Jeff Foxworthy. Remember? It was like here's your sign. It was like if your office hours are Monday through Wednesday,
then you're a redneck. That's what it was.
Well, I didn't say that, but you're a mom and pop is what
Yeah.
I'll say. If your office hours are Monday through, don't offend our
Yeah,
audience.
sorry.
Matthew.
That was Jeff Foxworthy. It was a Jeff Foxworthy thing.
But
Yeah. If you still have a shoebox full of receipts, you're a mom
right,
and pop.
you're a mom and pop. Right. You might be a mom and pop,
Yeah.
right? If you have one hygienist, you might be a mom and pop, right? If you're doing 100% of production, you are a mom and pop, right?
Yeah.
You might be a mom and pop. We have the, if your hours say Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5, you might be a mom and pop,
Yeah.
right? It's like maybe we should do that. Maybe we
I
should
love how
create-
sometimes people I go on our website too, and it'll be Monday through Thursday, and it'll be a little star next to a Saturday, and it'll say it's one Saturday a month. And then if you actually call that practice and you say, "When's your next Saturday available?" "Oh, we don't do Saturdays."
If you tell me that you won't expand hours because of your team, you might be a mom and pop.
You might be a mom
right?
and pop, yeah.
It's like we can keep going. Our copywriters in here. Katie's in the room. Like, well, Katie, we'll create a whole list of these and we'll send them
It'll
out.
be on
right?
YouTube. It'll be like.
I think we're gonna do a video, guys. We should do a video on that. Like, you might be a mom and pop.
Yeah.
Here's your sign, right? This
like
this
it.
whole thing. Like, here's your
like
sign,
it.
right? So it's like, here's your
And
sign.
we just
right?
list them out.
So I think that there is something. I was having a conversation yesterday with a gentleman who sold off 84 locations, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're talking about a sophistication. We were talking about the sophistication of that organization, and it's a dentist, and we were just kind of talking about sophistication of management and dental organizations. And look, I mean, it's ultimately, what do you want it to become? Look, you do not have to sell off to any kind of corporate. You do not need to. You can completely stay dental owned. I'm an advocate of that. I think that's great. No one said you needed to. You don't need to worry about. You can compete with organized dentistry. You can absolutely compete, and I would actually argue dominate.
Yeah.
Because you're going to do things from a competitive advantage they're not going to do. They're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So you have some advantages in the marketplace. But I think there has to be a shift. It's like you and I were talking about this. I mean, it's interesting. The person who's at 600 grand, they also the person who's worked with 7 consultants, right?
Yeah.
Because I think ultimately it's like, I'll keep cutting checks, but nothing keeps happening. Well, it's you.
Yeah,
it's
you're not
you,
doing
right?
anything with it.
And it's like, you haven't done anything that you've been told to do. And so there has to be a point where and it's interesting enough when I do a seminar, and we do a seminar, and it's always the people up front, right up there in center, that have the biggest practices and take the most notes. It's always the person back in the right-hand corner who walks out saying, "I've heard all this before," and doesn't get anything from it, right? And they're like, "I've got it all." It's everyone. That's right. It's like, how is it that the person who's growing at 40% a year, who went from 1 million to 10 million within 36 months, got all these notes, but yet you think you've got all the answers,
And it's like, even if you look at it, when you leave dental school, you're on an even playing field. Why is it that one person from your from your group that you graduated with ends up being extremely successful and you're still trying to get over the hump? And if you look at that, you're going to ask him the same questions, and you're more than likely her, and you're going to be told, and you're just going to be told, "Oh, that won't work in my area, or that won't work with my practice." Like, they just got something that was super easy, and we talk about it all the time. Whereas 5 years from now, people will be like, oh, they got it easy. They didn't realize all the mailers, all the postcards, all the phone calls, everything leading up to it. It's hard work. It's not going to come easy.
You know, one of the things he said to me, I thought was interesting on this phone call last night was he said, you know, one of the things about our offices, like we have offices in the worst parts of town. Like we have crappy offices that nobody wants, and we are dominating. And so this idea of like, well, you just don't understand. It's my market. It's my area. There's just no patients in my area. People don't want to pay. Look, you might be a mom and pop, right?
If if that's your reasoning for being a mom and pop, you have.
But here's what I would say to anyone listening. So look, a lot of people that are listening to this podcast are successful. Okay, so I want to give you some advice, and so I want you to get advice out of this. Because to be honest with you, most of you are listening to this podcast going, yeah, I agree completely, Eric. So here's what I would say is that you have to ask yourself, and by the way, I challenge myself on this too, so I'm not outside of this either, is that sometimes when I feel like, no, I understand, I start to challenge myself and go, well, maybe I don't. Yeah. Is it a possibility that I don't understand? And so before I start saying I've got the answers to that, or I know, because I'll do that sometimes. Yeah. I think we all do that. I think maybe it's just me, but I think sometimes we're like, no, I got all this. Yeah. And then sometimes I'll go, hold on, stop. Yeah. Maybe you don't. Listen, are you going to catch something maybe you didn't catch if you open your mind, and you tend to catch something. Yeah. And then I also think that it's the group you put yourself in. I had dinner on Monday night with these. They weren't dentists; they were business owners. One guy's got like 8 companies doing over 20 million, right? And this other guy's got this company doing gazillion dollars. And so you know, when you put yourself in that group, right, and you're talking, and all of a sudden, let me ask you something. If you took your dental practice and you're sitting at dinner, we were at Ruth Chris or something having a steak, and you're sitting there at that table, and they look at you and say, "Hey, doc, what are your revenues looking like?" And you go, 2.5 million, right? Now imagine saying 600 grand. They would invite you to the table, probably. They'd probably be like, But so you would have to say, it's 2.5, like under your breath, right? It's 2.5 million. Now, why do I say that? Because why does that matter in this conversation? Why? Because the fact that's why they say that your net worth is the 10 closest people you hang out with. See, it was interesting in that same conversation when the guy says, hey, we had an investor that put in like, X amount of million, and this person, I put in X amount of million. Like you're having a different conversation. Well, that stuff's powerful because all of a sudden you start changing what you believe is possible and what you believe you can accomplish, right? And so what happens is when you sit in this dental world, if you're doing $2.5 million, then you're thinking in the dental world, you're thinking, man, I'm look at me. Like look at my friends, look at my peers, look how successful I am. If you put yourself in the business world, you're like a small fish, small fish. So here's a great question. If you feel like you're the big fish in that pond, you need to find a different pond. Yeah. Because there is a limit to where like you start to realize like, oh my gosh, I'm not even close to what I could do. Yeah. And the more you hang out with people and spend time with them, listen to podcasts like this and spend time with people who are actually growing and doing amazing things in the organization, you go, my gosh, what could I do if I believed that way, right? Yeah. Well, you'd have to not be a mom and pop. You'd have to not think you've got all the answers. You'd have to quit hanging out with your friends that can't get over 600 grand either. Yeah. You'd have to start hanging out with, and by the way, even if you're doing 2.5 million, like I would challenge you, okay, well, why not 10? Like what's holding you back from 10? And
what are you missing out on?
And if your answer is because I can't get out of the chair, that is not true. Yeah. That is completely not true. And so that's another conversation for another podcast. But I would tell you this: challenge yourself. And I don't care where you are listening to this podcast. Challenge yourself. Is this truly the highest we can go? Are we truly doing it all, right? So I'll give you a conversation I had years ago. I remember this. I'll never forget this conversation. A guy starts to argue with me because I told him, I said, yeah, we can go from 1 million to 10 million in 12 months. And he was like, no. What are you talking about? That's he starts to get upset. He's like, that's insane. I was like, well, that's not true at all. We could just acquire like 3 practices that are doing 3 million apiece, and you have 10. Boom. You're doing 1 plus 3, plus 9 million. So he's like, well, I guess I guess we do that. I'm like, well, do you understand that the way businesses grow is through organic growth or Acquisition. So why not use an acquisition strategy? Why can't you use an acquisition? I'll tell you why you don't use an acquisition strategy, because you're still thinking like a mom and pop. And here's why you don't do it, because you think you have to do it. You think you have to go acquire the practice. You think you have to be involved. Yep. You think you have to make all the decisions.
Start looking at all the headaches.
That's right, all the headaches. And I got to talk to this person. I got to call this person.
It's going to take this much longer.
Versus truly delegating like an organization that was scalable would do. Yeah. And eventually, it's the same thing. Like, well, I'll talk about people about having operations lead, and people, do you know what they want for an operations lead? And I tell people this. I said, look, here's one of the things that to understand. I said, if I tell people, look, if I'm building a major dental group tomorrow, the first thing I'm doing is not hiring doctors. I'm building my C-suite. Yeah. So, so interestingly enough, about that conversation is that I was talking to this guy who sold off 84 locations, and what do you think he said? What do you think the first thing he said he would hire?
C-suite.
C-suite. Yeah. But then if you say so then you have a doctor who's limiting themselves at $2.5 million because they go, well, I just don't have the time to find another practice. I don't have the reason. But this is the same doctor who's taking home 40, 50 grand a month, and it's like, I just can't afford to. Yeah. Why don't you invest in somebody in your operation who can help you grow and help you buy other practices? And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. So please, nobody take this. By the way, somebody could do this to me too. I mean, this is not trying to disrespect anybody. I just want you to hear what I'm trying to say, because I'm trying to challenge your beliefs and challenge what you believe is possible, because it's not true. It's what we call self-imposed limitation. It's not true. You just told yourself it was true. Because I'll guarantee you, I could look at your revenues and be like, you have the ability to go hire somebody.
Exactly.
Do you know what they want for? Quit looking at your dental peers and asking what they're doing. They're still growing at 2.5%. Yeah. Why don't you look at what the DSO just did? Why don't you go look at what growing organizations are doing? That's who you need to follow.
It's just like any business. They're not going to wait. Like the reason why Snapchat and Facebook and Google and all that, do you think when they were expanding, they're like, I don't think we can. No, they just did it and figured it out.
Well, and I definitely, obviously think you have to have a financial plan around it, but there's the resources to do it. Yeah. Here's the crazy part. We'll go take out $180,000 for a piece of equipment we don't even use and hang clothes on. Yeah. But we won't go hire the person that could change our entire lives and organization. We won't hire consultants. We won't hire the people to get us where we need to be. But we love to go back to our friends and tell them why it's impossible to grow, right? And so
I tried to do this and it
didn't work. That's right. Yeah. Well, maybe the problem was you tried to do it. Yeah. I'm serious. Like, one of the greatest things you can do in business is hire capabilities. We hire capabilities. One of the greatest things we can do in business is hire capabilities. So if you don't have the capability, quit saying, I'll do it. Say, I'll hire the capability. If I don't know how to do it, I'll hire talent leadership so they can train me how to do it. If it needs to be someone who runs operations for my organization, I'll hire the capability. If I need a CFO, I'll hire the capability. If I need a clinical director, I'll hire the capability. So what we do in dental is we go, how do I find the cheapest person possible and pay them as little bit as possible so that I can take more money home? Yeah. But that's not what the rest of the business world does. The rest of the business world does. One of the things I've said one day is the biggest challenge dentists have is the fact that they believe they should get paid a crazy amount of money. I own a practice. I should make this much a month. Well, hold on. Yeah, but if you reinvest in the asset, it's a dividend yielding asset that's growing now.
You have an asset
that's at a terrific amount.
I think we teach. I think a lot of times it gets lost in the weeds is the opportunity cost, and we tell our clients all the time is, look at the opportunity cost. Like, what's the opportunity cost if you try to do this yourself? What's it going to cost you in the long run? If you were able to have a system in place, a team that helped you do this, and you were able to go from 2.5 million to 6 million, what is the opportunity cost of that? Like, what's that going to look for you in the long term? It might, be stressful at first, but ultimately speaking, you need to know what that looks like on the back end. And a lot of times they get too caught up in the middle and they're like, it's going to be this much work. It's going to take this much time. It's going to be this much of a hassle, instead of looking at it from, in a year from now, if we pull this off, what does that look like?
Oh man, what a brilliant statement. Like, good, Matthew. That was like brilliant. Like, drop that from somewhere. Like, say that again. If I was to say it again.
If I were able to pull this off in the next year, what would that look like?
Man, that's gold, Katie. That's gold. He's got gold over here. That's
got
got to go
two
into
YouTube
That's got to go
channels.
into
Yeah.
That's got to go into copy right there. That's gold. That's some gold, right?
If I pull this off, what does it look like?
Yeah. What would it look like if I pulled this off? What a great question, right?
Yeah.
Challenge yourself. What would it look like if I pulled this off? Is a hell of a lot better question. They say your growth is based on the questions you ask yourself. And what questions are you willing to ask yourself? And what a great question that is. Like, what would my life look like if I pulled this off, right?
Yeah.
Now, the first thing you'll go to is, what's the worst case scenario?
Yeah.
Okay, it's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
But fine, play the worst case scenario. What's the worst case scenario? Like,
You learned how to do it and it didn't go through.
I
Like,
mean, it's interesting. There's a direct correlation. It's the same thing. Like years ago, I did a correlation. I wrote down how much somebody paid us, and I wrote that down, and then I paid down the increase in net worth right next to it. I literally took an Excel spreadsheet. I wrote down payment and then net worth change, and it was like 100% correlated. Like it was like the more somebody, because they went all in. That's the thing. The more somebody was in, the more. By the way, here's the thing: the more they were in, the more our team was in. By the way, the more they were dedicated, the more we were dedicated. Nobody wants to go help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves. Nobody does that. Not a teacher. Nobody wants to help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves. No. So when you find somebody who's dedicated to growth, and any coaching relationship, by the way, it's by the way, this is just something for everyone to hear. If you're going to go from mom and pop to growing organization, all coaching is a two-way street.
yeah.
The more you put in, the more you get out. If you're quiet and you don't ask questions and you don't try, you're going to get less out. We had someone recently, well, I didn't open that resource for a year. I'm like, well, how the hell did you have a resource for a year and not open it for a year? Well, see, that's the thing. It's like the whole thing of going, I've got a gym membership and I've had a gym membership for a year and I never went. And I just don't understand why it didn't work.
Yeah.
It's like, well, hold on.
I gain weight.
So growing organizations, this is the whole thing. Growing organizations are so much different. Mom and pop says, hey, look, I'm not want to expand my, okay, this is a true story. So I literally want to give you, like, I'm all over the place, this podcast. I'm feeling good today.
We're
feeling good. We're all over the place today. So here's the thing. So I think it was Jordan who was telling me, maybe it was you, who told me, oh no, it was you that told me this. That's right. A guy called Tower Leadership, didn't want to put $1 in marketing, didn't want to increase capacity. Yeah. And
he was like, I'm at like 4.5 million now. I want to get to 15 million, but I don't want to expand hours and I don't want to get another location.
Okay, well, outside of increasing average revenue, which you can do, I mean, you have to really push average revenue, which is fine.
Yeah, and from based on his numbers, he was pretty much maxed out.
if you're okay, this is like, so there's like, it's like laws of physics almost.
Yeah.
Like if you can't put anybody else into the facility, we could increase the price point, certainly, but there's certain things. So it's like, it's one of those things where what he was saying was, and this is the truth, is I'm not willing to do what it takes to get to the next level. And that's the most important thing to hear. And see, here's what I was trying to say, and this is where I push back on everyone listening. Someone says I'm at $4.5 million. Look at me. And my pushback is, you're only at $4.5 million. Look at you. And that's the difference in frame reference. See, this guy who called had some arrogance to him, right? He thought he had all the answers, but in the realm of business, and even now in the realm of dental, he's small fish, but yet thought he had all the answers. And so that's what I was trying to say earlier when I said that challenge yourself to say, do I believe that I have all the answers, or should I open my mind to listen to other thoughts and ideas? Because if I do that, then I'll be a growing organization instead of a mom and pop. And I would argue that if you're at $4.5 million and you're not willing to expand, you're not willing to grow hours, you're not willing to open capacity, you're a mom and pop. And whether you want to believe you are or not, you are a mom and pop. And that's the difference. And people think, well, my revenues are higher. Well, revenues have a correlation with being a mom and pop or a growing organization. I would completely agree with that. Yet it's not a perfect system.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that just because you're a certain level that you're not a mom and pop anymore.
Yeah.
Now, he might have been a growing organization that relegated his position to a mom and pop.
Yeah.
Maybe there was too much stress in his life. Maybe he had something going on with his personal life. I don't know what it was, but he had relegated himself. And by the way, I'll guarantee you that organization starts to contract. There's a reason why they say that if you're not growing, you're dying. When you just make a conscious decision, people have asked me before, they've said, Eric, so what happens if I decide like I'm really good at where I'm at and I don't want to grow anymore and I just stay here? I said, that's impossible.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as staying here, by the way. Anyone listening to this, there's no such thing as that. Because what will happen is you have attrition. And you will have attrition. And all businesses are on the sigmoid curve. All businesses have growth cycles and stages. That you're not immune to that. Yeah. Disney's not immune to it. Amazon's not immune to it. Walmart's not immune to it. And you're sure as hell not immune to it. Yep. Every business has to continue to reinvent and recreate and make changes or die. Yep. It's that simple. You want to think you're above that? You're not. Yep. Well, I'm at dental practice. It's different. No, you're not. So if you decide at some point, hey, I'm good here, you just signed the death warrant.
You have to know what that means for you. Like you have to be comfortable with that. I think a lot of times they're just like, all right, I'm good. Yeah, I'm fine. But they don't understand what that looks like long term.
Now, when I say death warrant, let me that's dramatic. I tend to be dramatic. So let me tell you what I mean by that before you get all up in arms. What I mean by that is that what you decided that the organization is going to hit maturity and move into decline. That's what I mean. Now, decline might not be going from 4.5 million to 1 million, but you're a declining organization. And when I go to acquire your practice, what do you think I'm looking at? If you're in a declining position, do you think I'm going to pay a premium for your practice?
No.
Hell no. And so you have to understand that there is a growth and it needs to be continual growth. And by the way, when you start telling your leaders that you no longer want to grow, the great people, what do you think they do? Yeah. They leave. They want to be part of growing organizations. And the people that are left, I've said on this podcast before, are content. And so now you have a different problem, right? And so I think that, listening to this podcast, I would say to myself, like, am I a mom and pop? Forget my revenues. Do I have a mom and pop mentality, right? Here's your sign, right? Yep. Or do I have a growing organization? And if I have a growing organization, what am I committed to do to maintain and keep that now and in the future? And then if I was to do that, go back to your question again. What was your question again?
Ooh, I've already forgotten.
Katie, what was it? What was it, Katie?
If I pull this off, if I can pull this off in the next 12 months, what would that look like?
You got it, right?
Yeah.
All right. So okay. Am I part of a growing organization? What is my goal? Where's my vision? And if I could pull this off in the next 12 months,
what would it look
3
like?
years, 5 years, what would my life, my impact, right? Those around me, how many it would affect? I was saying to somebody this morning, and even though I could have ended on that note, that would have been a strong note to end on. I should close it down.
You continuing the conversation? Never.
Never. What are we at? 28 minutes? I could keep going for like 48 hours. So here's what is interesting in this. I said to him, interesting enough, I got into this profession and, I luckily surround myself with brilliant people like you. I'm blessed enough to get to work with you and the rest of our team. And, the idea of this company being called Tower Leadership is I really want to have impact on organizations and people, and our team wants to have impact on organizations and people. And I think there was a part of me that really truly believed some of the biggest impact we could have is to get the mom and pop to become a growing organization. And I think there's a part of me that actually believes now that the greatest thing I can do is support growing organizations and because those are the people who are going to impact the most people. They're going to create the most jobs. And if I can teach them leadership, and we can teach them leadership, and we can create systems around them, that's the greatest purpose, the greatest use of your time, the greatest good, right? So we're supposed to be working towards the greatest good. The greatest good you can do, or we can certainly do, is work towards organizations who want to continue to grow and impact their team, impact their communities, impact those people around them. And so, that's one of the reasons why we're created a minimum, is because of the fact that, look, the truth is that the greatest impact is working with the people who are dedicated to that. Now, I believe that some people are mom and pops can move into a growing organization. I believe that paradigm, or I wouldn't be sitting here today. But it takes courage. It takes commitment, right? It takes capabilities, right? And ultimately those things lead to confidence, but it takes that over a period of time. And the question is, are you willing to commit to that? And if you're a growing organization, what are you willing to commit to next to get to the next level? Well, we want to wish Matthew well. This is the last time Matthew will be in the studio. Well, right now.
Right now, yeah.
Because he's opening our Dallas location. We'll be in Dallas, Texas.
Yep. Leaving
You're
this
gonna get
weekend.
a cowboy hat and
already
boots
got
and,
them and boots.
You gotta rock some
for
boots.
For our Texas clients, I'm coming for you.
You gotta roll some Texas boots. I tried to pull off boots. It failed.
It all depends on the kind. Get some nice dress
That's what
boots.
you keep telling me. But then you gotta have the jeans to go with it, right?
Yeah, you gotta have the boot cut
jeans. See, I
jeans,
don't
yeah.
have that. Like you gotta get the whole. And then I go over the top on everything, so I'll end up spending $2,000 buying jeans and
in boots. And you'll be
I'll
like
probably
walking
spend
in here.
$4,000 on boots, right? Because you'll tell me that I don't have the right uppers or whatever.
Yeah. You need the Cayman skin.
I know.
I'll be Casey's, and
I'll be out there
in good
before you know.
shape.
I'll be thinking $400. I'll walk out there at $14,000 for a pair of boots.
in a cowboy hat.
You got to get that.
You got to get the and a belt buckle to go with it.
Yeah. So anyhow, so Matthew is going to start herding some cattle out in Texas, and will be out there for us. We have a lot of Texas clients. We have people all over the country. We're so blessed to have you. I think we're in like 37 states or something.
Yeah.
So I guess I haven't counted to the T because it expands often. Glad to have you. And so Matthew will be, where in the world is Matthew? We don't know where he's going to be at, where he's going to do a different virtual background. So those of you who are avid listeners, you'll have to
where do you want to see me next?
A contest, like where in the world is Matthew Maffei, right? And it won't be like easy, the Taj Mahal. It'll be like your backyard.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
You'll have to send me in the picture of your backyard.
In your swimming
I'm at
pool.
Whitewater or something
Yeah. So a roller coaster background, right? So anyhow, Tower team is expanding and we're growing, and so Matthew will be out there. But sometimes he'll be in the office,
so
flying in. He's gonna
watch on YouTube in order to see where I'm at.
Yeah, if you don't watch on YouTube, how are you going to know where he's at? See, you can't listen. We're not going to tell you on the audio, by the way. You got to go watch to see where he's at. By the way, Matthew's funny as shit, by the way, just to let you guys know. So you're going to want to watch the background, just to let you know.
Yes, I'll put some good stuff up there. Surprise you.
So he'll surprise you. So anyhow, glad to have you there this week, guys. I hope this challenges your mental state. I mean, the idea of this podcast, we can get on here and just talk just nothing more than tactical stuff. But I think that there's also a part where you need to understand your mindset and your strategic direction is a huge impact on where you go, what you build, and what you create. I think it was Jack Welch who said, great business leaders, articulate a vision and, drive it to it relentlessly. Part of something great in this is that understanding where you're going, who you are, what your vision is, and are you willing to drive to it relentlessly? Because that's what great business leaders do, and great business leaders listen to the Den Wealth Podcast. Guys, gotta have you. We'll see you next time.